Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jocelyn Stern, and I would like to welcome you to today's event, Planning for the Future, hosted by the Maryland Insurance Administration. Today, we are going to be talking about how much is enough for retirement, overview of annuities, and why having a will is important to your family. We're pleased to bring presentations from the Maryland Supplemental Retirement Plan, Baltimore City Register of Wills, and the Maryland Insurance Administration. To ensure the quality of today's presentations, all phones and microphones will remain on mute for this event, with the exception of the presenters. Please feel free to ask any questions you may have in the chat box throughout the event. Once all speakers have finished their presentations, we will begin a Q&A session answering all questions submitted to the chat box. You may continue to enter questions in the chat during the Q&A session as well. Our first speaker will be Jeannie Sutton with the Maryland Supplemental Retirement Plan.
Well, thank you, Jocelyn. As Jocelyn said, this is Jeannie Sutton, and I am with Maryland Supplemental Retirement Plans. And we are the administrators for the supplemental plans for 401k, 403b, and 457 plans for state of Maryland employees. And just want to remind you that, we're not here to give legal advice or investment advice or tax advice. And also, we do have a couple of website resources, and we just want to let you know that we do not control the content on those websites. But what we are here to do is focus on some of the factors that you need to take into consideration when you are planning for retirement. And it'd take 2 seconds to just say, okay, you need to save $1 million or $2 million, but it's much more than that. So there is no one size fits all for everyone. Lots of variables to consider. So before knowing, though, how much is enough for your retirement, you have to truly ask yourself, how do you picture your retirement? Will you be traveling and exploring, or will you be staying closer to home and maybe pursuing those hobbies that you didn't have a chance to do while you were working? But in any case, let's talk about some of the variables that you need to take into consideration. So the keys for building financial security for your retirement. Even if you haven't thought of what type of lifestyle that you want to have in retirement, you want to make sure that you aim to replace at least 80% of your pre-retirement income in retirement. Now, once you stop working, you will no longer be paying into Social Security and Medicare. So that takes about 8% off of what you're currently paying into. So, but advisors will say that you want to replace about 80 to 85%. Now, you also want to plan for a long retirement, at least 20 years, 30 years, maybe even more. So you want to keep that in mind as well. You also want to consider the inflation, which is the cost of goods and services, because when you retire today, the cost of that same good or service is going to be much different 5, 10, 20, 30 years down the road. So you do have to account for that. And you want to control your spending and your savings withdrawal. And, most advisors will say that you only want to withdraw maybe 4 or 5% each year. So you have to keep in mind to give that some perspective. If you have a bucket of money saved up, $100,000, and you're looking to have a retirement of 20 to 25 years, you only want to withdraw 4 or 5%. So that's only $4,000 to $5,000 a year from that bucket of money. So you have to keep those factors in mind when you are planning for retirement. Now, what are these sources of income during retirement? Well, you see up at the top there, there's Social Security. You know, this is just a list of some of the sources, but at the top there with the Social Security, according to Social Security, among elderly Social Security beneficiaries, those folks that are currently getting a benefit from Social Security, 21% of married couples and about 45% of unmarried persons on Social Security are relying on that benefit for 90% or more of their retirement income. That's a lot to depend on Social Security for. So if Social Security is your only source of income, there may be a gap of what you're currently making while you're working versus what you'll be receiving in retirement. So you really want to take a look at your Social Security statement. We're going to talk about all of these, just touch on all of these as we go along in the presentation. Now, some of you may be fortunate to receive a pension. A pension is what's also known as a defined benefit plan. So if your employer offers that defined benefit plan, make sure you know all the rules. Make sure you know when you're vested. Make sure you know what that formula is. A pension is usually based on a formula of the number of years that you've worked plus your salary. So just be aware of the rules. Now, a lot of companies, private industry, have done away with pensions, and they rely on employees to save for their retirement through a 401k. That's for private industry. 457 is for municipalities, as well as a 403b. Now, a 403b is specifically for nonprofit organizations such as hospitals and universities. And these three types of plans, they are known as what's called a defined contribution plan. You're defining that contribution that goes in, but you have no idea what it's going to grow to. You may have a general idea, but it can't give you an exact dollar amount. And then if your employer doesn't have a 401k plan, then please make sure that you are contributing on your own through an individual retirement account. These are IRAs. They're not associated with any employer, and they have traditional and Roth IRAs. Again, we'll talk about that. And then if you have other investments, maybe in a brokerage account or savings or CDs. So you factor all of that in. Now, down at the bottom here is a part-time job. And with a part-time job, you know, you may have planned to work part-time in retirement, but there is a difference between working because you want to and working because you have to. So, you know, our hope is that you're working even after you retire, you're working because you want to, but not because you have to. So please make sure that you save as you go along to fill in any gaps. Now, Social Security, if you haven't gone on to the Social Security website, it's socialsecurityssa.gov, and create a My Social Security account. You know, you can do this. It's a free account. Years ago, they would send out, Social Security would send out your statement every year, 3 months prior to your birthday. They stopped doing that quite a while ago. So it's up to you to go online and create that account, or go and visit your local Social Security agency. But with Social Security, in order to receive a benefit, you need to have 40 quarters, and that's approximately 10 years of working. Your Social Security benefit is based on the 35 highest years of earnings. So you want to make sure that Social Security has your yearly income correct, because that is what your benefit is based on. Now, if you are not familiar with what your full retirement age is, you can see on the left-hand side, there is a chart. Depending on the year that you were born, you can see what your full retirement age is. Now, full retirement age is the age in which you are entitled to 100% of your earned Social Security benefit amount. So take a look at that. Take a look at that chart. Make sure you understand what your full retirement age is. Now, it's interesting when you get that benefit statement, it will give you 3 different ages. if you qualify for retirement, if you have enough quarters in, you can actually start receiving a benefit at age 62, even though that is not your full retirement age. However, if you take that benefit early, then what happens is that your benefit amount is forever reduced. So you can see from the chart here, well, let's say that full retirement age is 67. Anyone born 1960 and after, that is their full retirement age at 67. But in this case, the person decides they want to retire at 62, start taking their Social Security, and they've saved enough. Now, their Social Security benefit amount would be only $750 versus the $1,080 at the full retirement age. Now, the longer you wait, the closer you get to that full retirement age, you can see that that benefit amount increases. So on your Social Security statement, you will see age 62 benefit amount, you'll see your full age benefit amount, and then you will also see what your benefit amount is if you wait until 70, because if you wait until 70, they give you a little bonus there. So if you wait until 70, you would actually get more than that full retirement age amount. Now, a lot of times I'm asked, well, should I start taking Social Security? There are some tools on that website, ssa.gov, that can help you with that. But you do have to take into account what your health status is, your life expectancy. You also need to take into account if you need to let your benefits grow in case you have surviving spouses. Okay, because there is one thing you want to keep in mind, that when it comes time to take Social Security, if you have a spouse, when one spouse passes, the surviving spouse only gets to keep the higher of the two Social Security checks. You don't get to keep both Social Security checks. So you want to keep that in mind when you are doing your planning for retirement. So that's a Social Security. Let me back up here, because after Social Security, if you find that you have a gap, you've added up everything, then you really need to start saving. And as it says here, how can you change your future? You need to take action today. And for any of you that are in your 20s and 30s, you do not want to delay saving for retirement. My mom always said, the older you get, the faster time flies, and that's very true. So time is money in this case. So in this example, I love this chart because it does a couple of things. But if you have a 25-year-old and they are saving a monthly investment of $100 through age 65, that 25-year-old would have actually saved $48,000 out of their own pocket. Now, you can see the different rates of return. And with those different rates of return, you can see the more the rate of return is, of course, the more you are going to accumulate. This chart also shows the compounding effect. And this is what compounding is letting your money grow. So that 25-year-old saving $100 a month through age 65 and getting a 9% average annual rate of return. Now, we know the market doesn't go at a steady 9% every year. It goes up, it goes down. But overall, if they get an average rate of return, that's over $400,000 that they have for retirement, for saving. If they wait 5 years, that 25-year-old says, nah, I've got plenty of time. They wait until they're 30. They only contribute through age 65, $42,000. That's only $6,000 less than if they would have started at age 25. But if you look at the other end of things, that's a $180,000 difference. That's a huge $6,000 mistake by waiting. So this chart shows what compounding can do, different rates of return, how that is important, and then how important it is to start saving and saving as soon as possible. So what are the best ways to save? Some of the best ways to save are right through your employer plans if you do have them. So here are some of the common types of retirement accounts. The employer plan, if you look on the left-hand side of the Venn diagram, you'll see in that green area, we've listed the 401k, 403b, 457. These are some of the most common types of employer plans. So employer plans are only through your employer. And it's quite possible that your employer may be matching those dollars as well. Now, with employer plans, generally there's a trustee, and those trustees will limit the number of investments that you have to choose from. So, they still have a fiduciary responsibility in order to give you a multitude of investments to choose from, but it still may limit it than if you were to have an outside plan. And when I say outside plan, if we look to the right-hand side of that diagram, I'm talking about an individual retirement account. This is an account that you, as an individual, you can open up through a bank, through a brokerage. Anybody can open it as long as they have W-2 income. There are some other rules associated with that. There is also some tax deduction income limits. So if you make over a certain amount, then you may not be able to contribute the full amount. Whereas with an employer plan, your income amount is not an issue. You can make as much as you want and still contribute to an employer plan. And then in an individual retirement account, you're open to the world of investments. So there's hundreds of thousands of mutual funds, and you can decide whether you even want individual stocks or bonds. So that is completely on your own. Now, both types of plans, whether it's through an employer or your own individual account, there are contribution limits. There are limits to the amount that you can put in each year. Now, for an IRA, individual retirement account, the maximum for those folks under age 50 is $6,000, whereas if you're 50 and older, there is what they call a catch-up contribution. You can actually start putting in more. You can put in $7,000 per year. Employer plans, much more generous contribution amounts. With an employer plan, if you are under age 50, you can actually defer up to $19,500 a year. So you can contribute, quite a bit. And if you're 50 and older, you can contribute up to $26,000 a year. So regardless of whether it's an IRA or an employer plan, the earnings, that interest that you're earning, it will grow without you paying taxes. And then depending on the plan and when you have access to it, you will then pay the taxes, whether it is based on a Roth contribution, which is pre-tax, or if it's based on, pre-tax is what's known as a traditional contribution, and after tax is known as Roth. So I'm going to talk about that in just a second, but either way, you've got tax benefits with these plans. So as I said, you can have the option of doing pre-tax, which is also known as traditional. That means you don't want to be taxed on these dollars now that you're saving. So you want to be taxed later, farther down the road. So if you have a short time horizon, maybe you're making more and you realize more while you're working, and you realize that when you stop working, that you will be in a lower tax bracket. Well, why pay more in those dollars that you're contributing when you know several years down the road, you're going to be in a lower tax bracket? So that's when you take those dollars out and you're taxed at the lower tax break. So you have to think about, bottom line, you're always going to pay taxes, and you have to think about what serves you better, what keeps more in your pocket. So you might choose the pre-tax if you think you're going to be in a lower tax bracket later. Now, there is the after tax, that is the Roth. That means you want to be taxed now on your contribution. So maybe you're in your 20s and 30s and you're just starting out in your career. So you've got a long way to go before retirement. And so that means you may have 20, 30, 40 years of growth of earnings. So you would rather pay taxes on what you're contributing now allowed to grow without you paying taxes. And then when you meet certain requirements in retirement, then all of those earnings that have accumulated, you will not be taxed on. It's a pretty good deal. So keep that in mind. Now, that's the contributing part of things with the taxes. But you always have to factor in the taxes when you are doing your retirement planning, because as it says here, it's not what we make, but what we keep. You want to keep more in your pocket. Your Social Security will be taxed. Now, we do get a break on the taxation of your Social Security, depending on how much you are making, and that amount does change on a yearly basis, but depending on how much you're making, you will be taxed on either 85% of that benefit amount or 50% of your benefit amount. That is added into your taxable income at tax time. Pensions are taxable. And then, of course, your 401k, 457, 403b, the defined contribution plans, depending on whether you checked off the Roth box or the pre-tax box, that would specify when those taxes are paid. And then annuity income, if you purchased your annuity with pre-tax dollars, that is also taxed. And then most non-retirement investments, such as your savings account, any CDs that you may have, any stocks and bonds and mutual funds that are not within that retirement, that IRA wrapper or a 401k employer plan wrapper. Now, it's also important to note that with these types of dollars, with your retirement savings, whether it's an IRA or an employer plan, required minimum distributions are due. Okay, if it is pre-tax dollars, meaning that you've never been taxed on these contributions, you got the tax break when you put the dollars in, it grew without you paying taxes. If it is a pre-tax contribution, then at age 72, Uncle Sam is ready for his share of the taxes. So you have a required minimum distribution that you must take. If you don't take that required minimum distribution, there's a penalty. And that penalty is pretty stiff. It's 50% of the amount that you should have taken. So you want to make sure that you do take that required minimum distribution. Now, if you have a Roth IRA, then required minimum distributions it's not needed. They don't require you to take any minimum distributions on Roth IRA dollars. And now the required minimum distributions, if you are in an employer plan, 401k, 457, it's not required at age 72 if you are still working. If you are still working, then you do not have to pay that required minimum distribution. But once you do stop working, that is when you have to pay the required minimum distribution. So there's a lot of in and outs, but these are the basic rules that you want to keep in mind. Now, the whole thing, as I said about with taxes, you want to keep more in your pocket. So these are just some basic ways to take the dollars out. These are the withdrawal strategies, trying to make it the most tax efficient. Now, of course, if you're age 72 and no longer working, then you do have that required minimum distribution. So that would definitely be the first thing that you withdraw from. But if you have taxable accounts, money sitting there that you have to pay taxes on, use that anyway. You have the principal in your taxable accounts, and then it gets to the tax deferred accounts, so that those dollars, if you find yourself in a lower tax bracket or a year where you're not paying as much, then it might be better for you to withdraw from those tax deferred accounts. And then with your Roth accounts, as I said, there is with the Roth IRAs, you do not have to pay the taxes on that, and even your beneficiaries will not have to pay taxes on all those earnings that have accumulated. So, there is a lot of factors that go into planning for retirement. Like I said, it'd be much easier if we could just say, save up $1 million, save up $2 million. but you have to decide what your retirement is going to look like. You have to decide how much you will spend. You have to keep an eye on the type of investments and how much you'll be earning, and how long will you live. Unfortunately, that is the big unknown question. But taking into account your health, taking into account what your status is, you also have to think about how much you can withdraw each year from your savings. So a lot goes into it. We always suggest that you do consult a tax person as well as a financial advisor. So take all these things into consideration when it comes time for retirement. So anyway, you can see it's important to save. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeannie, for your presentation. I really appreciate that. Our next speaker is going to be Tanya Toller, who is also with the Maryland Supplemental Retirement Plans.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tanya Toller with Maryland Supplemental Retirement Plans, and this session is being recorded. Now, let's get into today's presentation. We are going to be providing an overview of retirement basics. And thank you, Jeannie, for the information that you provided. You may see some of the slides that Jeannie used in my presentation. You may see just a little bit of overlap, but the need for retirement planning often gets overlooked and can be a bit confusing. And so there are a lot of steps that go into the process. So it's important to know that obviously there are some factors such as your salary, your debt, your expenses that are going to affect your ability to save. However, time is also a major consideration to think about. So there's no one size fits all solution to retirement planning. And our goal here today is basically to acquaint you with the different types of retirement plans and how they can function to help you to reach your financial goals. Oh, too quick. Now, let's talk about this survey. There was a survey that was conducted by Go Banking Ranks in 2019. And the survey data, it just reflects how Americans on average are saving for retirement. Now, this survey data reveals that over 45% of Americans have zero saved for retirement. Now, this is almost half of the population in the US. Now we can see why it's so pertinent and so important to save for retirement. And the numbers for different savings thresholds on the chart are not that promising either. So more than ever, it is essential, necessary that workers begin to start taking a deep look into how they are going to fund those golden years. These are just a few quick facts about employer-sponsored plans. Now, employer-sponsored plans are offered by employers as a means to help workers to save for their retirement. And there are various types, such as the 401k, the 457B, and the 403B plans. And there are two main types of plans as well. You have the traditional account, and you also have the Roth account. And there are no income limits to participate. You can take out loans, but only if your plan allows it against the funds that are in your account. And some employers may even match your contributions. So consider carefully how taking out a loan could affect your overall financial goals. Now, with the state of Maryland, if you are a state of Maryland employee, you do have the ability to take out loans against your 401k, 457, and 403B plans. But again, consider how it's going to affect your overall financial goals. The 401k, the 457B plan, and the 403 plans are all employer-sponsored plans. So for non-state employees, okay, I don't know where we stopped, what happened with the recording, but let me go back a slide just in case we skip this one. And so the 401k plan, the 457B plan, and the 403B plans are all employer-sponsored plans. For non-state employees, make sure that you contact your employer about which plans are offered. Now, all employees of the state of Maryland, including those who are contractual employees, are eligible to participate in the 457B and the 401k plans. State employees who work within a state educational institution are also eligible to participate in the 403B plan as well. Both the 457B and the 401k plans offer a pre-tax and an after-tax Roth option. How much can I contribute? Now, these are the contribution limits for 2021. They're listed. The IRS sets these limits of how much employees can contribute to their retirement plans on an annual basis. And the limits could change from year to year. So the chart you see here shows that for those employees that are under age 50, they are allowed to contribute $19,500 into their 457B plans and 401k plans as well, and their 403B plans as well. So let's go through that again. You are allowed, if you're under 50, to contribute the 457 and the Roth 457 combined, a total of $19,500. And if you have 401k plans and 403B plans, the maximum that you can contribute to those plans combined in a year is $19,500 for a total of $39,000. Now, if you are over the age of 50, there is this age 50 catch-up provision in place. So if you have the 457, your 457B accounts combined, if you have one or multiple, the maximum that you can contribute to these plans is $26,000. Now, if you have the 401k and you have a Roth, 401k Roth, and a 403B plan, the maximum that you can contribute to these plans is $26,000 for a total annual amount of $52,000 per year. These are just a few quick facts about an individual retirement account. And IRAs, I'm sure you've heard those before, but individual retirement accounts are retirement accounts that allow you to set up, you can set these accounts up with a financial institution that too allows you to save for retirement. And so in order to open up an IRA, you must have earned income from work. And to avoid a 10% early withdrawal penalty at the time of your withdrawal from an individual retirement account, you have to be 59 years of age, and you must have kept the money in the account for at least 5 years. These are just a few. This diagram is just showing us a few common types of retirement accounts and the differences between the two and the similarities. The diagram is showing us the benefits and advantages of employer-sponsored plans, individual retirement accounts as well. Individual retirement accounts, the contribution limits for the individual retirement accounts or the IRAs. For 2021, for workers that are under age 50, they are allowed to contribute up to $6,000 per year to an IRA, and workers that are over 50 are allowed to contribute $7,000 per year to their individual retirement account. Now let's switch gears and talk about the tax treatment of the traditional versus the Roth accounts. They vary. And that's because the way that you put the money into these accounts, it varies. Now, the traditional retirement accounts, and we're kind of focusing on the right side at this point where it says pay taxes later. These tax deferred accounts means that the contributions from your pay come straight out of your paycheck before any taxes are withheld. These types of accounts reduce your taxable income and gives you a tax break today while you're working. However, when it's time to start taking money out of these accounts, you're going to have to pay taxes on every dollar that you withdraw. That's the tax deferred account. Now, the Roth accounts, on the other hand, are funded with money that you've already paid taxes on. So unlike a traditional account or the pre-tax account that we just talked about, or tax deferred, unlike that one, if you meet the conditions of your plan, you can take distributions out in the future without having to pay any additional taxes. So there are separate rules for taking money. Just to delve a little bit deeper, there's different rules for withdrawing money from a 401k Roth versus a Roth 457B plan. So it kind of deepens a little, the plot thickens a little bit, and the rules are a little specific to each type of Roth account. For non-state employees, please make sure that you check with your employer regarding whether or not Roth options are available within your employer-sponsored plans. Time is money. Jeannie just mentioned this a short while ago, but I'll just give you a short and brief illustration. Hypothetical illustration. We have a 25-year-old who is investing $100 per month up until age 65. They would have contributed $48,000 of their own money. And based on their returns, and in this example, we're looking at a rate of return of either 4, 7, or 9%, they would have accumulated anywhere from $118,000 to $471,000 in their retirement account. However, if they just delay investing just 5 years, they would have contributed $6,000 less. If you see that column, that second column that's in that rose color, they would have accumulated between $91,000 and $296,385. And so you see, because of them delaying investing, then what happens is they are not taking advantage of the power of compounding. So in closing, make your retirement a priority. Make sure that you start saving early and often. This is just one suggestion that we normally give to participants when we're doing webinars for state of Maryland employees. And that's if you pay off a major bill, such as a car, or maybe you pay off some high interest rate credit card debt, and you've given yourself an instant raise or boost in your disposable income, or you get a raise at work, or you get some type of cost of living adjustment, that's a good time to start raising what you're contributing. And oftentimes what we see is individuals think that you need to put boatloads and boatloads of money into these plans in order to be successful and to be well off, but that's not necessarily the case. It's about starting early and being steady and being consistent with your contributions. That's what it's all about. Make sure that you are reviewing your accounts and that you are, again, increasing your contributions whenever your budget allows. And also don't forget about your loved ones. Keep your beneficiary information up to date. It's a good idea that anytime you have a major life change, such as births or deaths or marriages or divorces, that you keep this information up to date. And so that is the end of the presentation, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Tanya. I really appreciate that. Our next speaker is going to be Patricia Dorn with the Maryland Insurance Administration.
Thanks, Jocelyn. Hi, everyone. My name is Patricia Dorn with Maryland Insurance Administration, and I'm going to talk to you today about annuities. So this is my presentation, Annuities 101. Just a quick overview of who we are, who is the Maryland Insurance Administration and what we do. The Maryland Insurance Administration is the state agency that regulates the business of insurance in Maryland. And that means that we license the insurers and we also license the producers. So those are the agents and the brokers. We license them to do business in Maryland. We examine their business practices to make sure that they follow the laws. And we monitor the solvency of the insurers. So we make sure that they have the money to pay your claims. We review and approve the insurance policy forms, and we review insurance rates to make sure that they're not inadequate, and so that those insurers are collecting the money that they need to pay your claims, but that also that they're not excessive or unfairly discriminatory. And we investigate consumer and provider complaints and allegations of insurance fraud. So I'm going to get into this today. I only have about 15 to 20 minutes, and annuities are complex. And so I'm going to try to get through what I can, but go back real quick. If you want to jot down my email address, patricia.dorn@maryland.gov, you can request a copy of this presentation after the presentation itself. Otherwise, it will be posted on the website in a couple days. So that's patricia.dorn@maryland.gov. So what is an annuity? An annuity is a contract between you and an insurance company under which you pay either a lump sum payment or a series of payments. So maybe you give them the money all at once, and maybe it's a series over time. In exchange for that, the insurance company agrees to make payments to you in the future. So you either give them money once or make some payments, and then they agree to make payments to you in the future. The amount of the payment is determined by the terms of the contract. So the terms of the contract are going to be different from annuity to annuity, and it may also be determined by the market environment. So it typically varies depending on the amount of the original payment or payments, the length of the investment, and any withdrawals you may have made, as well as other factors. Annuities are not life insurance, but most include death benefits. They're frequently used as an investment tool, and they did mention them earlier when we were talking about investments. However, they may not be the best option for you. But if annuities is something that you have in mind, it's something that's important to educate yourself about. And so I'm just going to go over a couple things. These are tips for understanding annuities. An annuity can have a number of different features, requirements, and options. Again, annuities can be complicated. The details can be difficult to understand even for an experienced investor. And we strongly recommend that you consult with a trusted advisor when you're considering an annuity. So some questions that I'm going to go over today. How does the annuity earn interest? Is it fixed or variable? And these are questions for you to ask if you go down the path of pursuing an annuity or just getting information about an annuity. How do you pay premiums into the annuity fund? When does the annuity start paying you? How does the annuity pay you? And what administrative fees and charges does the annuity have? And is there a surrender fee? So I'm going to go over a little bit about what those mean and what you're going to be asking. And so there's two basic types of annuities. So two types of annuities, fixed and variable. In a fixed annuity, the insurance company guarantees that you will earn a minimum rate of interest during the time that your account is growing. So that's a fixed annuity. The interest rate may fluctuate. Fixed annuities tend to be more conservative, and the guaranteed rate may be higher or lower than the interest rate you would earn in a bank savings account. So it could be higher than what you get in the bank savings account. It could be lower. An equity index or fixed index annuity is a variation of the fixed annuity. And so I know that's a lot. That's a lot of new terms, especially if you really haven't educated yourself or if you don't know anything about annuities yet. So there's a lot of terms in here. In an indexed annuity, you choose how you want to invest your premiums. Your premiums can go into a fixed account or an indexed account that you select that's offered by the contract. And please, if you have questions, put them in the chat. So variable. So I just talked about fixed. This is variable. Variable annuities offer the chance to earn greater returns. So by that, I mean greater profit on your investment. So potentially greater returns than the typical fixed annuities, but there's greater risk. And also they tend to require more active involvement by the contract holder. So active involvement, that's going to mean that you have to make decisions on a regular basis about your investment. And oftentimes you're going to have to do that annually. So that's a commitment. If a variable annuity makes sense to you, then you have to ask yourself, how active do you want to be involved in this investment? Maybe you already have investments and you understand how actively you're involved in them. So these annuities are highly dependent on the performance of the stock market, and they generally make no guarantees about earnings. If the annuity fund performs poorly, you could lose some or all of your original investment. So let's talk about an example. If you own a variable annuity in 1 year, you could choose to put 40% of the total value into the annuity's bond fund. Maybe you put 40% into the stock mutual fund, and then the rest, so 20%, into its money market account. So 20 plus 40 plus 40, that's 100. That's all of it. So that's how you've distributed it. Meanwhile, another purchaser of the same annuity could allocate his or her accumulated value in a completely different way. So you choose how you want to invest your premiums with the variable annuity. You select the funds based on your own risk tolerance. This means that investors who purchase the same variable annuity will have different rates of return depending on those decisions that you made. And again, these are really important things to discuss with a financial advisor. So how do you pay premiums into the annuity fund? A single premium annuity is a contract where you pay the entire premium upfront in one lump sum. The advantage of a single premium annuity is that the full amount of your premium begins earning interest on day one. So there's the advantage right from the start. However, the flexible premium annuities allow you to pay however much you want, when you want, with certain limits. Most flexible premiums will require certain minimum premium payments, at least in the early years. In some cases, companies may also place a cap on the maximum amount that you can contribute. So that period of time that you're making these contributions, that's called the accumulation period. And that's the period of time when contributions are being made into the annuity and the value of the annuity account is building. And I hope that makes sense. One other comment, if you are just really confused about how something is being presented, feel free to put those comments in the chat as well. Feedback is always appreciated. So this is annuitization and withdrawals. Annuitization is the process of converting your annuity into a series of periodic payments. So when the contract owner is ready to begin receiving payments, so you paid all that in and now it's time for you to get your payments, the insurer computes a payment based on several factors, such as the value of the contract, the projected longevity of the beneficiary. So projected longevity of the beneficiary means how long the beneficiary is projected to live and the type of payment chosen. Each annuitized payment includes a little bit of the principal, part of the principal, while the rest is made up of earnings. A lump sum withdrawal is generally allowed, but that can be a costly move within an annuity. You need to review your plan's rules, and you may be required to pay taxes, penalties, and a surrender charge. So we'll cover that in a bit more depth in a few more slides. So when does the annuity start paying you? Immediate annuities begin the payout phase within a very short period of time, from 1 to 13 months, for example. And for this reason, immediate annuities are typically paid for in a single premium, since the entire premium amount must accumulate before the payout phase begins. The purpose of an immediate annuity typically is to convert a large sum of cash into a steady stream of income for an extended period of time. So a large sum of cash, that lump that lump sum payment into a steady stream of income for a long time. Deferred annuities begin the payout phase sometime after purchase. So some decent amount of time after purchase. The time when the payout begins is dependent on the contract. So it's going to change from annuity to annuity. The majority of annuities sold today are deferred annuities. Instead of receiving a payout, you also have the option of rolling the amount over into another annuity or to extend your existing annuity. Most deferred annuities include that accumulation period. And so again, that's the time when you're contributing into the fund. So the period of time where the contributions are being made into the annuity and the amount is building, that's the accumulation period. So how does the annuity pay you? Several ways, and I'm going to read through them. So life only. The company makes payments for as long as the recipient lives. This payment amount is largely determined by life expectancy. The longer the recipient can be expected to live, the smaller the payment amount will be. There's no guarantee that the total amount invested will be returned. On the other hand, the recipient is guaranteed the income for the remainder of his or her lifetime. If the recipient lives a long time, more than the amount paid into the annuity could be received. That's life only. Fixed period. This means you receive a payment for a fixed number of years. Payments after the recipient's death may be made to a designated beneficiary. Life with period certain. That is when payments are made during the lifetime of the recipient with a guaranteed minimum payment. That means if the recipient dies without receiving the minimum payment, a balance is paid to the named beneficiary. And joint and survivor life, the company pays the annuitant or survivor for as long as either is alive. And I know that this is a lot. And for sure, if an annuity is something that makes sense for you, this is not going to be the first time that you visit this material. It is a lot of definitions. So not all annuities offer these options, and some may offer other options. Be sure to read the actual annuity contract, in addition to any brochures the insurance producer may give you, to learn about the features of the annuity and how the payout is structured. So it is important that you try to understand your annuity. You should seek advice from your financial advisor, but definitely, try to understand the product as best you can yourself. So what administrative fees and charges does the annuity have? Is there a surrender fee? That's a good question. These are good questions to ask. So it's important to ask your financial advisor questions about what happens to your annuity contract if you die or decide to purchase another annuity. If you're considering replacing one annuity for another, carefully compare the old product with the new one. So if you're considering doing that, ask, are the death benefits the same? What about the surrender value? Is there a surrender charge to get out of the old annuity? And are the annual fees and new surrender charges higher for the new product? So for the annuity that you're considering purchasing? And will there be new surrender charge period for the new product? So for the new annuity. So just make sure that if you're going to make a change like that, that you ask the right questions, ask those questions and get them answered. Most annuities will charge you a substantial penalty for a withdrawal from your accumulated value during the surrender period. This penalty is called a surrender charge, and it's typically highest in the early years of the annuity, and it may be reduced or eliminated over time. So the longer you've had the annuity, possibly the less that surrender charge is. Surrender charges commonly range from 5 to 15% of the amount withdrawn. High surrender charges can erase any earnings you may have gained. These penalties are the primary reason an annuity generally is preferred as a long-term investment and may be unsuitable for individuals who have immediate need to access their funds. So again, discuss tax consequences, and in this case of an early withdrawal with a tax advisor. Also, ask your financial advisor if the annuity contract includes a death benefit and a surrender value, and make sure that you clearly understand the taxes you will pay on any benefits received. So this is, in short, if this is something that you want to do, if you want a different annuity, make sure that you ask the right questions and make sure that you talk to tax advisors and financial advisors to get those questions answered. Couple shopping tips. Consider consulting an accountant, a financial advisor, or a trusted family member or friend. Again, if you purchase, so this says, if you purchase an annuity you don't understand, you could be in store for surprises down the road, and you don't want to be. So make sure that you don't purchase a product that you don't understand. Shop around, compare the interest rates, compare surrender charges, compare the projected return with other types of investments. Even with an annuity's tax advantages, other investments may provide an equal or better return while providing less restrictive access to your money. So while making it easier for you to get your money if you need it. Make sure the time frame for payment is right for your needs. So remember, this is not a short-term investment. It takes generally several years to become profitable. An income in an annuity is not taxed until it's paid out. So talk to a tax advisor before buying an annuity within a retirement plan. So within a retirement plan, such as a 401k or an IRA. Understand your own level of risk. So that goes back to what we touched on, earlier. If you have some experience with an investment product, you might understand your own level of risk. It's important to decide the level of risk that you're willing to accept before you purchase an annuity. Weigh that against the risks posed by the type of annuity that you're considering. Some are riskier than others, as we went over. Fixed annuities guarantee a minimum rate of return. Variable annuities have the potential to earn significantly more, but you could also lose money. Verify that the producer and the insurer are licensed with us. You can contact our office to verify. Consider the insurer's financial condition, and take your time. Definitely. It's probably not the best idea to purchase an investment as complex as an annuity in your very first visit with your agent. You might want to take the materials, think about it, do research, talk to your advisors, and find out what makes the most sense for you. Maryland has a legally mandated free look period. So all annuities sold in Maryland come with a minimum 10-day free look period. And during this period, you can cancel the contract for any reason. If you have a fixed annuity and you cancel within the free look period, you may be entitled to a full refund. If you have a variable, you may not receive a refund for any loss in the investment. So just something to know. And be wary of annuities sold door to door or over the telephone. We have a few documents on our website. We have a consumer guide to annuities. We have information on the Maryland Life and Health Insurance Guarantee Corporation, as well as a consumer advisory, trading your annuity for a new one. This is our contact information as well. And again, if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and thanks so much.
Thank you, Patty, for that presentation. Appreciate that. We will be moving on to our next speaker, who is Mr. Roth Ira with the Registered Wills of Baltimore City.
Okay, thank you, Jocelyn. Really appreciate that. So as Jocelyn said, my name is Raphael Knight. representing the Register of Wills for Baltimore City. Before we get into presentation, as following those wonderful ladies presented, let's talk about who the Register of Wills is. And what we do. The Register of Wills and the orphan courts ensure the distribution of the decedent's wills. We are actually a protector of the person who is deceased, the heirs, those who stand to receive what they're entitled to based on the wishes of the person who is deceased, and also the state of Maryland to ensure that property taxes and fees are collected. There's also an orphan court which appoint a representative for orphans in the event that parents are passed away, to ensure that that child gets exactly what they need to get until they reach the age of 18. This is certainly not only for Baltimore City, but all the other jurisdictions in the other counties in Maryland do have a register of wills. And it's important that, wherever you live, that's a register of wills that you would contact for your information. Now, let's move to what is a will. Now, a will is simply the declaration of a person's wishes regarding the distribution or the disposal of their property, asset, and any valuables that they may have after their death. Now, a will, you may wonder, can I have a handwritten will, or does it have to be typed? The truth is that your will can be handwritten, but what makes it a legal document is that you sign that will, and there must be 2 reliable witnesses that also sign that will, which binds it and makes it a legal document. Now, wills is not new to us. Wills have existed for some time. It's quite a long time. In ancient history, over some almost 4,000 years ago, we have recorded, you can always look this up in Google, on the internet, Lady Nanukte of Egypt, she disinherited her children because they didn't take care of her at the time. And so disinheriting them so that they wouldn't stand to inherit what she had worked hard for, considering how they had treated her in the past. And that's something you can put in your will, because nobody wants to work for all their life and have someone who did not deserve it benefit from all of that. So once you are putting your will together, of course you need to select a personal representative. And it's important to select a personal representative, someone who's responsible, because let's face it, there are times when family don't necessarily agree, and not every family member would definitely have your best interest at heart. And with that said, sometimes we have to ensure that the most responsible person is made a personal representative, so that your and our wishes can be carried out in the best way that we had intended for it to be distributed. Now, who needs a will? Now, anyone who wants to ensure that the legal declaration of his or her intent or desire be carried out after death needs a will. Now, if you have assets and property that is not in your name only, and you have taken care of all your due diligence in terms of your final affairs, and everything you have documented who is supposed to get it, their name is attached to the house, such and such. There are cases where you may not need a will because you have done your due diligence. However, it's always recommended that you do a will, because you and I have no idea. Sometimes money comes from nowhere and ended up in your account and it's in your name alone. And in that case, if a will is not done, that money that comes in will be subject by law in how it is distributed. And so it's always important to pen a will and make sure you have that will. Now, the will is one of the most important legal document that you'll find. You know, as we shared before, it specifies exactly what you want and how it should be carried out. Now, when we're talking about, you know, wills and estate, there are some useful vocabulary, useful things that we should note. And an estate, you know, we have heard the term thrown around here. An estate is everything you own. So after someone passes away, let's say Tom passes away, then you'll find that the bank will refer to Tom as the estate of Tom and not Tom. So it becomes now the estate of, and all monies and all assets will now be inside of the estate of such and such. Now, in the simplest form, there can be two estates. Estate type can be either small or regular, which we'll look at in a few slides coming up. Now, testate will mean that you die with a valid will. So you're a tester if you prepare your will, and if you die with your testate. Intestate means that you die without a will. Now, in both cases, an estate needs to be open once there is property that needs to be distributed or asset. Now, probate is simply the legal process by which the property is transferred from you, from I, for anyone who is deceased, or when we are deceased, to the living beneficiaries who needs to get it. And the court does that probate process to validate the will and to ensure that whatever your wish is, the deceased, the living person will definitely get what you wish for them to get. Now, this is just to stress, to highlight rather, or stress the importance of a will. Consider a husband who was separated from his wife for over 20 years, not just separated, but was abandoned by his wife. You know, let's switch it around and say that a husband abandoned his wife, you know, for several years, 20 years. And upon her death, let's back up. They weren't divorced, did not divorce. And so upon her death, you would expect that the distribution would be given to her children. Now, because no divorce happened, then the husband can come in as the husband and even take away what's due to the children, or vice versa if it was a wife who abandoned the husband in this situation. And so again, we wouldn't want to work all our life and to find someone who neglected, who abandoned, who didn't take care of us, to come in because the law says so, simply because you and I or someone failed to pen or put together a will and file it with the Register of Wills. Now we are back again with the type of will, estate rather, small estate and regular estate. So for a small estate is a small estate if the property of the deceased person subject to is established as a value of $50,000 or less. So if the estate value in terms of the assets, property, or liquid cash is $50,000 or less, then it is deemed as a small estate. If the property of the decedent is in excess of $50,000 or more, then it becomes a regular estate. And of course, I'd mention about an orphan. If there's a situation where the parents have passed away and there's a living child, then it is now a guardianship estate, and a guardian is appointed that will ensure that, along with the court, to ensure that that child gets what is due to him or her. Now, as it relates to asset, as it relates to the probate process, assets include the property, whether house, car, smaller items. You may have jewelry or antique or other valuables that you may have. That also include out-of-state property, accounts that include checking accounts, 401k, stocks and bonds, and other investment that you or I or other persons may have. Will estate generate money after death? For example, you have royalties such as music, books, or movies. Those are also assets that will come into an estate after someone is deceased. Now, here again, we're talking about the personal representative. Based on the law of Maryland, a personal representative must be appointed, and that person must be trustworthy, able to organize good communication with others, familiar with financial matters, and certainly be able to handle the different communication back and forth along with the Register of Wills, and if there's an attorney as well. Now, so the idea is that we need to be prepared. Now, if you consider, just consider this. Typically at the reading of a will, an attorney reads the last testament, the last will and testament of the deceased to family members and legatees. In addition to specifying inheritance, the deceased might also write final thoughts, desires, expectation, priorities, and hopes. A person's last words are often a summary of what they consider most important. Now, with that said, the idea of the whole issue of, your final affairs is priority to the Register of Wills, and is our option and mission. Now, what happens if you die without a will? If you die without a will, then your will be handled or probated or determined by the state of Maryland. It will subject to the intestate law of the state of Maryland that will direct who gets what in order of priority, who stand to inherit what you have worked for. Now, we mentioned that there are times when family don't agree, and sometimes, one family member could say that, hey, mom promised me this. The other one said, no, she did promise with me before she promised it to you, and hence you have conflict. And so it could continue, and in often cases we have seen at the Register of Will, it can get ugly. And so with that, we are highlighting and encouraging the importance of doing your will. Now the Register of Wills, because we have had, calls, the Register of Wills, we don't necessarily write wills. We are prohibited from doing so, from giving legal advice. We do safekeep your wills once it's constructed and done for a fee of $5. We do, however, provide multiple resources in which you can get your will done in terms of attorneys' offices, in terms of other legal advice. It's important to know that wills are important historical documents. Over the years, we have seen so many people come and were able to reclaim properties and assets that was due to them from persons, relatives who passed away 20, 40, 50 years ago, simply because they knew about it and we had the file stored in our records. And so they do serve a lot more purpose than we may think that they do. With that, our staff is here and ready to support you in everything. The issue of debt is not something that brings about excitement. It is challenging, and especially with what we're going through with the pandemic, it is challenging time. But our team is certainly dedicated in serving you. And one of the things we have done on the leadership and guidance of the Honorable Miss Belinda Conaway, we are trying so much to educate residents in the city to ensure that their will is done, but not that alone, but also to provide all the different resources that we can provide to provide ease in you conducting and taking care of your final affairs. We want to remind you that, continue wearing your masks and all the safety measures to ensure safety as you traverse and conduct your business from day to day. This is our information. Please feel free to go to our website. Our website have a plethora of information there that you can certainly get. We have FAQs there with answers that could definitely help you in the process of managing your final affairs. Please also, whatever question you have, put it in the chat. And it has been a pleasure, presenting this information to you. Thank you so much, and to the wonderful team that put this together. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation, Raphael. I appreciate that. And now we have come to the end of our presentations, and we are now ready to start our question and answer portion. So do know there are a few questions in the chat box that we will begin with. So the first question will be for the ladies with the Maryland Supplemental Retirement Plans. And the first question is it true that when you take a loan out against your 401k, if you pay it back, you pay it back with interest?
This is Jeannie. I'll go ahead. Yes, you do pay it back with interest. And the thing is that when you pay back that interest, you're paying that back to yourself. So, and interest, I know for our 401k plans and 457 plans, right now it's prime plus 1%. So that's the quick answer.
Thank you, Jeannie. And there is another question. If your spouse is over 65 and is receiving SS benefit and you are under 65, if they pass, do you still receive their benefit?
Okay, I'll go. This is Jeannie again. Well, it depends on what you do get a survivor benefit. So it would also depend on if the surviving spouse was also receiving a Social Security check, because you can start receiving a Social Security check at age 62. If that's the situation, then they would be able to receive the higher of the deceased spouse's benefit or their benefit.
Thank you, Jeannie. I do have one question for Raphael as well. Where should I keep my will?
That's a very important question. It's important that your will is kept in a very safe place. We encourage that you file it to the Register of Wills, where, for a fee of $5, where it's kept in a vault and extremely secure. We suggest that for several different reasons. We have had, multiple situations where a will was left with the attorney went out of business, lose contact with his client, and hence the will is now lost. It's kept in a safety deposit box. That will work, but certainly it's best to keep it at the Register of Wills, or somewhere safe where you can determine that someone else knows where it is, so that in the case what happens, unfortunately, they'll know where to get it. But we do recommend filing to the Register of Wills in the jurisdiction in where you live, so that it will be safe and easily accessible when needed.
Thank you for answering that question, Raphael. And while I have you, I have another question for you. Are wills a matter of public record for others to view?
Yes, certainly after the person is deceased, then the will becomes public record. There have been cases where it may not be, but that will require a petition to the court to have that will not being able to be viewed by the public. But for the most part, wills are public records and can be viewed by anyone after death.
Perfect, thank you. One more question we have. What is the age you can receive survivor Social Security benefits?
I'll go ahead. You can actually receive them at any age, but depending on your age, that would basically let you know how much you would receive. And it's also on the statement. It depends on what the deceased person, their work record, and what they were entitled to receive. So when someone receives their Social Security statement, or again, I would suggest that they pull their Social Security statement or create an account and go online and view that, and you will see what the survivor benefit amounts, even for children, would be through Social Security. So that's all included on your statement.
Thank you for answering that question, Jeannie. I have another question here. As a property out of state and does not have a will for the property in that state, they would like to know, is it recommended that they make a will for the property out of state?
Okay. You can include the property that's out of state in the will, but normally the property that's outside of the state, usually once a person is deceased, then they will have to transfer documentation from your jurisdiction to the jurisdiction where the state is at for distribution of that asset. Or they require paperwork from the jurisdiction where that property is for it to be transferred in terms of the proceeding if the property is sold. But it will definitely a rule of thumb to include the property, whether it's in state or out of state or out of the country, certainly in your will.
Thank you, Raphael, for that answer. The next question I have is, a person would like to know, when I am 72, will I have to take money from my IRA account, or will I be penalized for not?
Push the button quicker than Jeannie. I have this one, Jeannie.
Okay.
And thank you for your question. So the question was, if I'm 72 and I have to take money from my IRA account, or will I get penalized? And yes, that is what's called the required minimum distribution. And so when you turn age 72, it is required once you turn 72 and each year thereafter. And so the reason why those required minimum distributions are in place is because the government doesn't want people just leaving their money in these types of accounts indefinitely. And that's to how they collect the taxes. So once you turn 72, that required minimum distribution is required, and every year after that.
Thank you, Tanya. We have a few more moments for a few more questions if anybody has any.
Jocelyn,
Yes.
I just want to add to the last question to make sure that I answer it accurately. There would be no need to write another will for the property that's in another state. The one will that you're making in the state that you live in, you would just include that property in that will as one will, and not necessarily to make another will to submit to the authorities in that state because the land is in that state.
Thank you.
I hope that was a little clearer.
Raphael, I have one more question for you while I have you. How do I get a letter of administration?
Okay, in order to get a letter of administration, you'd need an estate would need to be established. So a letter of administration is needed for several different things. One, it's needed to get information from the hospital or from the home. If someone is deceased, then you will not get information from the medical institution, from banks or from homes or anywhere else without a letter of administration specifying that you are the personal representative of the estate. Along with that, you'd need a letter of administration to change the title, the name of a title to whosoever it wanted, to sell a car if it's not, if it has someone else's name on it, the deceased name, or just in terms of land, to add or change the deed, the name on the deed, certainly. And so you will have to fill out a few paperwork, a small estate. And once those paperwork are filled out, which include a petition, list of interested person, information report, a Schedule B that lists the funeral expense and a few other expenses and monies in the estate, file it with us, and after which a letter of administration will be issued.
Thank you for that answer. So this does conclude our session today with the Maryland Insurance Administration on our financial education series. We do hope that you guys will join us next Wednesday, which will be April the 28th, the same time, 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Also, if you have gotten a chance to gather everyone's information who attended today, please feel free to reach out to them with additional questions, concerns that you may have.